what are the main objects on the blockchain, and that's the objects that we will be interacting with. That's the accounts on the left side, the green ones. They are also called the externally owned accounts, and these are the accounts that usually are used by people. As you can see on the top left, there's a MetaMask picture. So usually that's used via MetaMask to interact with your account. And the account basically shows a bank balance, so the balance of the ETH that you have. On the right you see the contracts. They're also called contract accounts or CAs, and they contain a smart contract. So that's what we will be learning, how to create those smart contracts. You can see them also like sort of a mini bank, the contract. And the contract itself contains data structures and all kinds of data which you can update and interact with. This picture shows all the interactions that are possible between accounts and contracts. So it always has to start with an externally owned account, because that's the only one that can do a function call. So that's the green line that you can see over here. And it's also the only one that can initiate creating of a contract. So you can create a contract from an externally owned account, and you can call functions to that contract, and you can transfer ETH to that contract, and you can also transfer ETH to other externally owned accounts. Once you have a contract, or you're calling a contract via a function call, then that contract itself can do other functions. It can create another contract, it can call also another contract, and it can transfer ETH to another contract. And it can also transfer ETH to another externally owned account. So a lot of combinations are possible, but it always has to start with a green one, an externally owned account. So when we zoom in a little bit closer on the smart contract, you see the three things that can call a smart contract. So that's the creating, the function call itself, and the transfer of ETH. And within the smart contract, there are functions, and those functions are also called based on how it's being invoked. So when you create a contract, there's also a function. It's called a constructor. That's the initial function of the smart contract, and you can use that to initialize variables or do whatever you want. Then we have the function calls. The function calls usually involve a function name. So what the contract does is basically check the function names, and based on the function name calls the appropriate function. So for example, ABCD or DEF. And if it cannot find a function name that matches with the list of function names in the contract, so it's an unknown function, it calls the fallback function of the contract. So that's pretty useful sometimes to always be able to interact with the function. And then there's the transfer of ETH. You can transfer ETH as a separate call, or you can also combine that with calling a function. So whenever you call a function, you can also transfer ETH. But if you just transfer ETH and don't call any function, then also a specific function is called in the contract, and that's called receive. So that's be able to know when you receive ETH and to do some actions on it. And by the way, this only works if you use Solidity version 6 or higher.